Awesome. Good morning, everyone. We would like to welcome you to our session, Planning for Literacy from Curriculum and Instruction as part of the Early Career Teacher Support Summit. As was put in the chat, if you have not already done so this morning, please make sure that you have completed the Google sign-in form to note your attendance. And if you've already done this, you do not need to do it again. This is our recording notice for this session. We are recording so that this professional learning can be accessible to all APS employees now and in the future. Recordings may be placed on various APS resources such as department websites, Google Classrooms, or our APS YouTube channel. By continuing to be in this Google Meet session, you are consenting to be recorded. I would like to note, though, that in Google Meet, your image will not be shown in the recording unless you are speaking aloud. I would like to introduce our team of support specialists here today who will be presenting Planning for Literacy. My name is Dr. Maggie Carrillo. I am one of the English Language Arts Teacher Support Specialists with Curriculum and Instruction. I am joined by my colleagues, Rachel Hortzman and Kathy Wolf-James, who are also ELA Teacher Support Specialists with Curriculum and Instruction. We would also like to thank our colleague and team member, Andrea Quintana, who will be running tech support for us today. Today, we have some virtual norms for this space as we present Planning for Literacy. Please mute yourself unless speaking, but cameras are your choice. We recognize that internet sometimes works better if your camera is off, and there are plenty of ways for you to engage with us even without the camera. We ask that you set some intentions today for how you want to come into this space and what you would like to learn today. We encourage you to try some new things that you will hear about in today's presentation. Finally, please ask questions at any point in the chat box. Our colleague Andrea will be watching for questions and comments throughout the session. Today's goals are centered around 3 key actions of understand, feel supported, and locate. The session today is a beginning step towards constructing literacy blocks that support all students in their literacy development. We want to provide you with knowledge, resources, and support that you can use even after today. Here is a brief overview of today's agenda. We will provide some research on literacy blocks, some instructional strategies to try with your students, some district resources, and a little time to discuss next steps and create an action plan for success. So let's begin with the research on literacy blocks. What is included and what might your time look like? So what are literacy blocks? Literacy blocks are a specific amount of time spent on the essential elements of literacy. Most often, teachers use their reading core curriculum during this time and provide spaces for independent reading and writing, collaborative conversations, and small group instruction. In New Mexico, our literacy framework specifies a 90-minute reading block. However, you will probably need more time to intervene with students struggling with reading and provide additional instruction time in other areas of literacy, such as writing. 90 minutes will most likely be written into your school schedules, but ultimately it is up to you to find the time you need to ensure students receive a minimum of 90 minutes in literacy each day. Below, you will see the recommended time allocations from the New Mexico statewide literacy framework. This document from New Mexico Public Education Department outlines requirements and recommendations for literacy instruction, assessment, and leadership for all New Mexico educational agencies. You will find a link to this document in our reference section. We're going to simplify this a bit to get started in constructing successful literacy blocks. Researchers Goff and Tunmer in 1986 and Goff and Hoover in 1990 developed a simple multiplication equation to represent the underlying components of reading comprehension. Word recognition times language comprehension equals reading comprehension. It is important to note that this equation is multiplication because students need both components to be successful in reading comprehension. Let's start with 1 times 1. If I am a good decoder, I'm sorry, 1 times 1, so they need both to be successful. If I am a good decoder who can read all of the words on the page, that's the 1, that does not understand any of the words that I read, the 0, then I am not comprehending what I am reading at all. So 1 times 0 equals 0. If I can understand the stories that are told to me orally, which is the 1, but I cannot read the words of the story, the 0, then once again, I am not comprehending what I am reading. Thus, 0 times 1 equals 0. Additionally, if I can read some words and understand a little bit of the language told to me, then still I am not fully comprehending what I am reading. So 0.5 times 0.5 is 0.25. I must have both to comprehend what I read. The 1 times 1 equals 1. Yet implementing both is not always clear. Many of us wonder, what will this look like with my students? The answer is vague. There are some recommendations, but it will depend on the learners in your classroom. Part of the consideration will depend on their grade level and, in general, their age. Researchers Motes and Tolman stated that in their 3rd edition book, Letters, from 2019, that kindergarten and 1st grade students will need about 40 to 50% of the time in your literacy block dedicated to word recognition, which is about 36 to 45 minutes in a 90-minute literacy block. This does not last forever, though, because as students become better in word recognition, they are able to focus more on language comprehension for reading. In 2nd grade and up, that time on word recognition will be somewhat less for students that are on track with grade level word recognition skills. Word recognition never fully leaves the literacy block. Instead, it changes to focus more on morphology, word parts with meaning, to support students in learning vocabulary words and aid in language comprehension. In thinking about this, we must consider what exactly is word recognition instruction and what does it look like in our classroom? Well, independently of Goffin-Tumner and Goffin-Hoover, researcher Hollis Scarborough created an image called the reading rope in 2001 that described the instruction that takes place in word recognition. Motes and Tolman connected this reading rope to Goffin-Tumner's equation in their Letters Handbook to show how the two frameworks are connected to each other. Here are the components of word recognition instruction. The first is phonological awareness. These are sound activities based on word, syllable, onset rhyme, and phoneme, or individual sound levels. Often this takes place very early in literacy, with most instruction happening in grades K1 and some advanced work in grades 2-3. Many lessons in your resources only require about 2 to 5 minutes each day and may include some visuals and manipulatives, but not letters. The second is phonics instruction. This instruction takes those sounds that we worked on in phonological awareness and connects them to graphemes, which are letters and groups of letters like E, I, G, H to make the sound A. We actively work towards mapping those sounds and letters together in the brain to support decoding unfamiliar words using a variety of multisensory strategies. This is also a part of early literacy development that requires more time in K1, a little less in 2-3 if the student is building accuracy and automaticity in decoding words, and then transfers to focusing on morphology in grades 4 and up as students begin learning more prefixes, suffixes, and roots in their academic vocabulary. Regardless of your grade, phonics is what takes up the most time in your word recognition instruction. The final component is sight recognition. In this instruction, we work on building automaticity with the words we have orthographically mapped to the brain. This includes decodable words that the students can sound out, high frequency words that we have read in stories, and even irregularly spelled words that are not decodable, like the and of. Essentially, you are providing that instruction that is not only focusing on the accuracy of what has been read, but the automaticity of reading. These are often built into your phonics lessons or provided as a mini lesson for certain high frequency words that students need to know. Altogether, phonological awareness, phonics, and sight recognition provide the base of word recognition instruction. Like mentioned before, word recognition is only one part of the reading comprehension equation. We also need to work with students in language comprehension. We are going to work on this in a variety of ways as students progress through the elementary grades, as stated by researchers Motz and Tolman. Because many of our kinder and first grade students are still learning how to decode words and building up their bank of words they recognize by sight, we engage in language comprehension through read-alouds of complex text. This complex text provides access to higher language structures and vocabulary, creates interest in engaging topics, allows students to explore different types of genres, and sets up a base for collaborative conversations and critical thinking. In second grade, students are continuing to build their sight word bank and decode challenging words, but they can work on language comprehension skills through read-alouds and some grade-level decodable texts. In fourth grade and up, most students are reading many texts on their own with accuracy and automaticity, where they can focus on the comprehension of the text rather than decoding the words. Notice that in all of these grade levels, we are still doing read-alouds. Read-alouds are crucial in every grade level, even with our secondary students, because those read-alouds can engage all of our students in high language comprehension work in text levels beyond their current reading abilities. There are many parts to language comprehension that we work on orally and through reading. Researcher Hollis Scarborough, creator of the Reading Rope in 2001, described these 5 areas as key parts of language comprehension instruction. The first is background knowledge. It is what the students already know about a topic or a text. This knowledge can come from anywhere in the students' lives and will either build on the knowledge of the text or can even contradict the knowledge in the text. Ultimately, we must do our part in eliciting that knowledge from students, embedding it into the instruction, and encouraging our students to consider their background knowledge with what is in the text. The second area is vocabulary, which is the knowledge and memory of word meanings. We work on this through context clues, definitions, synonyms, antonyms, and the morphology of words. The third area is language structures. This is how we analyze sentences and the words within sentences to create meaning from the text. The fourth is verbal reasoning. This is probably the most familiar area in comprehension because it focuses on how students construct meaning from a text through inferences, metaphors, and other references. Many graphic organizers center around verbal reasoning since they support students in constructing meaning. The fifth area is literacy knowledge. This area has to do with understanding print concepts and recognizing text structures of various genres. These areas in language comprehension are continually developed throughout all grade levels and are often taught in mini lessons focused around a certain text or texts in a certain theme. Now on this page, you will find a couple of examples of literacy blocks that you can use as you construct your own literacy block. Remember, these are not requirements, just ideas. Let's take a look at these examples. This is an example from an APS teacher. This is how that person constructed their literacy block and incorporated both district and additional resources to create a cohesive literacy block. You can see that they have intentionally planned for mini lessons and small group instruction to ensure that all students get what they need to be successful in literacy development. In the next example, Reading Rockets has an example of what a general literacy block could look like based on the research they have collected on what effective literacy instruction looks like. They have example activities and potential ideas for how groups work during the small group time. Your own literacy block may look similar or different to this. It will depend, once again, on the learners in your classroom.
Thank you, Maggie. We are next going to be looking at the instructional strategies to use within that literacy block. These are specific strategies, and they're broken into two categories: strategies targeting word recognition and strategies for language comprehension. With each strategy, I will let you know where you can learn more. And remember that teaching is a beautiful profession, and it is iterative, and it's never the same from year to year. You can always revisit these slides and the resources within to remind yourself of something or to try something new that you haven't had a chance to yet. There is not an expectation that you will use all of these strategies tomorrow, rather that you walk away with at least one thing that will make your literacy block more impactful for student learning. So the first strategy for word recognition is phonics visuals. Foundation sound cards using a picture to support learning to associate the letter with its corresponding sound is one example. Here you see that they are also represented in our foundations cards. In this particular example, T, top, t. So students would have a visual to remind them of the phonics lesson. They can be multi-sensory, and you'll see in the poster, it can also be represented on the right with all of your sounds in one spot, but having a visual. That's our first strategy. Our next strategy is called bridge game. Now this is a game giving students the opportunity to practice beginning and end sound recognition through game-based learning. This is a strategy recommended for pre-K to grade 1 in a small group setting. And let's take a look at this game. So in this game, a teacher would first model the strategy, and she'd hold up a picture of a mouse, for example, and tell students, this is a mouse. What is the animal? Mouse. Listen carefully when I say that word again, mouse. The first sound of the word is mouse. What is the first sound? And students would respond, We would repeat that same sequence with other animal names that are one syllable, like wolf, ant. And then next we would go into some small group practice for that. This would be where the game begins. So each student would receive a picture of that one syllable animal. You tell students, I am the lion that guards the bridge. And maybe you have like a little popsicle stick bridge or a picture of a bridge. In order for your animal to cross this bridge, you need to answer 2 questions. What is your animal name? And what sound do you begin with? We would repeat the same activity with the animals going the opposite direction for the end sound of the name as well. And you can use animals students can identify. This is really critical. It's really hard to segment or to think about sounds for words we're not familiar with. So you really want to build background knowledge if your students aren't familiar with some of these animals. So this is one game you could incorporate into, one strategy you could incorporate into your literacy block. In our next learning activity, students play a version of Simon Says that gives practice in segmenting sounds. So this is a great reminder, again, that it is difficult to work with a phoneme in an unfamiliar word. Simon Says is a common game using vocabulary that is also common, but it is important to remember that our students, especially students learning English, may need to build background knowledge of those words in order to be successful in this game. This could be played whole group or small group. It's recommended for pre-K to 2nd grade. And so in the Simon Says game, you would play a couple rounds of Simon Says as a warm-up. You would introduce students to a puppet named Simon. You can make a puppet out of a paper bag if you don't have a puppet. He speaks in a coded language. When he wants to say a word, he segments the sounds. Ask the students, like, what is Simon saying? Oh, that's right, nose. Can you touch your nose? And now you would play Simon Says after having that warm up with a couple different body parts. And you'd say, now we're going to play Simon Says. Instead of saying the body parts, we're going to use Simon's coded language. Simon will segment the sounds of one word in each command. So an example would be Simon says, touch the tip of your oh. And your students would touch their nose. Now let's all hop on one g. And students would remain still because of course you didn't say Simon Says. And so students will definitely have to listen carefully for that game. Our next strategy is phoneme grapheme mapping. In this activity, students make the connection between phonemes, their graphemes, and practice combining the graphemes by writing the whole word. So in this one, students would have a grid similar to the one you see in front of you, and you would say the word and you're going to segment out those grapheme students to practice, or you may need to provide more support at the very beginning, but the goal is for students to be able to segment the sounds and put each grapheme in its own little box, and then at the very end to combine those graphemes and to make their full word. So practicing multiple skills. Our next strategy is word wall versus sound wall. And it is also very common to see word walls in schools. And this is technically two strategies. And so I'm putting these side by side for really important comparison. Like, word wall provides critical advantages in a classroom. And here's a picture of one as well. A word wall offers the opportunity for students to have practice with irregular words. They are typically listed alphabetical order. Sometimes they're grouped by similarities. The goal is a word wall is to have that automatic recognition and usage throughout your day because it's in your classroom and it's a resource for your students to use. And in this strategy, you would start with high frequency words your students need to use and then move to low frequency words. And when I say grouped by similarities, one example would be could, would, should. Like in your word wall, you might have your words put together based on commonalities. But I think it's more common with word walls to have them alphabetical. Now I'm going to hold this in contrast to the sound wall you see also. Often this is anchor charts for foundations, but you can definitely see different versions of this. But in this, you might have your sound cards and a pocket chart, and it would be a tool. So less of a resource with all the words written for me, but more of a tool for students to come to when they want to put words together. So they have the tools that they would use to when they're reading and writing. In both of these examples, it's accessible to students. They can use it throughout the day. It's visual, and it's used by not just the student, but the teacher is constantly modeling it as well. And so presenting these to you in contrast, because there's considerations that might even indicate both. In my second grade classroom, I definitely have both a word wall and a sound wall. And one is used more for students to put words together versus finding the word quickly. And so presenting both of these strategies to you together for the consideration of why not both, or even a combination therein. So our next strategy straddles the two categories of word recognition and language comprehension. Now, vocabulary permeates throughout all academic settings. And in a phonics lesson, we need to connect to word meaning. Phonics study in isolation isn't as effective as taking the time to connect phonics instruction back to the meaning and context of the words that we're studying. And so, my slide's catching up. This might look like a word web. It might look like examining multiple meanings of a word. It might look like classification of words from adjectives, nouns, and verbs. But also, at the end of our lesson, we might look at the words in context. Read the words that we just studied in phrases or in a simple text so that we can connect our study of words back to their context and meaning. So we are now going to transition to language comprehension strategies. This first strategy is discussion. And this strategy emphasizes that students need ample, structured opportunities to engage with a lesson by talking to each other, to you, and in different settings. Researcher John Hattie recommends thinking carefully about the questions we pose to students for discussion. Are they rich questions worth discussing? Now, in a larger classroom discussion, you could use a support like Talk Moves linked here in this slide to guide students into that deeper questioning and understanding. And when I say varied format, that means we're not just talking to the same student all the time, but our groups are dynamic, like talking to different students about different things, so that we really can have really fantastic language comprehension growing and practice with the language as well. Now, similar to vocabulary, background knowledge permeates throughout all content areas. One of our favorite strategies on our team for building background knowledge is to use a collaborative KWL chart activity. And this would look like you, the teacher, displaying a picture, a video, an artifact, or reading a passage that piques students' interest about a specific topic that you are about to study. So at the beginning of a unit, Here's something to just get you started to think about it. And then we would open up this KWL chart, which would be a 3-column chart. And I wish I had included an image of this. I will go back and link it in here though, so that if you come back to the slides later, that there will be a good example for you. So in the K section, the very first column of our 3-column chart, our students would share things that they already know about this particular topic. Like, Miss Kathy, this reminds me of when we would go to the zoo, and they would tell you all the important, beautiful knowledge that's already in their brains. And all of our students would have an opportunity to share. And we then move to the W. What do we want to know about this topic based on what we already know? And so we're tapping into background knowledge, and we're using that as the ground we stand on to launch into what we want to know about this topic. And we would finish at the end of the unit about going back to the learn section. Actually, throughout the unit, we would constantly come back to this KWL chart, big and bold on your wall, perhaps a large poster that students can revisit throughout the unit and say, I just learned something new, to really build up background knowledge. So our next strategy is student-centered learning. In this strategy, we as teachers move away from teacher-centered instruction. Researcher John Hattie, who we talked about earlier in discussion, found that teachers are the primary speakers in their classroom 70 to 89% of the time. To make this shift from the teacher talking all the time, students talking, like discussion is a great strategy, but we also need to think about what we are doing. What are our students interested in? What do they want to learn? What do they need to learn? We want to consider, how do they learn? Do they learn best with multisensory? Can we have interactive read alouds where it's not just my voice? And can students set goals that we really are focusing back on what is the student's role in this classroom? And here on this slide, I also have some more ideas for how you can make that shift in your classroom, for promoting student engagement, sharing the responsibility of instruction, creating inquiry-based and discovery-oriented curriculum to really encourage that community of learners. Okay, our next strategy is direct instruction. And to best target language comprehension, direct instruction should be limited to 5 to 7 minutes, depending on the age of the students and the lesson content. Direct instruction best supports student learning when it's both whole and small group. Again, varied formats. We're not doing the same thing all the time in our literacy blocks. The teacher should state the goal and purpose of that particular lesson, quickly review previous content, and then spend the bulk of that time, that 5 to 7 minutes, explicitly teaching the new skill. Direct instruction should be followed up with some guided practice. And now this segues to our next strategy, gradual release model. Like in this model, the cognitive lift of the lesson will slowly transition very methodically and predictably to the student. And generally, this is referred to, I hear this often, I do, we do, you do. You'll hear that often when people are talking about gradual release model. But what it looks like is first direct instruction and teacher modeling, followed up with that guided practice. And then we have independent practice. And this isn't just 3 steps and we're done. You had your independent practice, therefore our gradual release model is over. The goal is to be independent. And so you may have to go back and forth between guided practice and independent practice using formative assessment to determine which step is necessary in order to really release to independent. And our final strategy that we're going to share for your literacy block is fluid small groups. This is based off of a common elementary school structure of small groups. And the strategy of fluid small groups offers many benefits to a classroom. In a traditional small group setting, they are generally homogeneous groupings, and these widen the achievement gap and are harmful to students' motivation, social skills, and self-esteem. With a fluid small group where students are moving between different groups, it's usually based off of student background knowledge, their interests, and their skills. And the key here is that they change often. Students shouldn't be limited to one group that a classroom teacher set on the first day, but rather it should be really based on who they are in this moment for this particular skill, for this particular background knowledge and their interests. And that concludes our instructional strategies, and I'm going to hand it off next to Rachel, who's going to share district resources.
Thanks, Kathy. So I am here to share kind of how do we do all of these strategies in APS. And what resources do we have? Things we're going to cover today are our curriculum that we have available for you in APS, as well as our team, the TLN, what we have for you, and learning opportunities that you can engage in throughout the year, and who you can reach out to. The two things I will not really be covering today that you see on this page is letters. We will not dive deep into that, but know that is something that you will likely hear about, especially if you are a K-2 teacher this year. That training has begun for some teachers and will begin later this year. And our 3 through 5 teachers will engage in that training in upcoming years. So if that's a word that you hear often, keep an eye out for emails about that to see if you fall into that category. The other thing we will not touch too much on today is the TLF, but know that every single school site has a teacher leader facilitator that actually works with our team throughout the year. They are a knowledgeable teacher at your site that should be working in a classroom, and they can be an invaluable resource to you as you begin planning your school year. So know that I have all of these slides made for you so you can return to them and see screenshots of the things I'm about to show you, but I'm actually going to switch my tab over and kind of do a live walkthrough with you. So you'll see I just have a blank tab open. If you'd like to follow along and kind of click with me, you're welcome to do that. We're going to start by talking about Benchmark Advance. This is one of our district-supported literacy curriculums. It is best suited for that language comprehension piece that Maggie talked about earlier as part of your literacy block. So to access that, if you have your APS credentials already, you will go to my.aps.edu. And I think mine is already logged in, so it just brought me there. But to log into that, you would use your employee number starting with E, and then your password that you use for your email. This is a great home base. I'm going to come back to this page a lot because most of the resources I'm sharing with you are accessible from this page. But you'll see we've got Benchmark is just right up there at the top, and it would open up a new tab for you. And it should automatically sign you in. ClassLink will save all of your passwords and bring you to all of these websites without having to log in again. So you've got a few different resources. I'm just going to jump right into Benchmark Advance here because there's one specific resource that I'd really like to focus your attention to today. I'm going to filter just to first grade, and up at the top here, this is your digital teacher's manual. So in your classroom, you would have a physical copy of this. It's got a spiral ring binder around it, but Benchmark calls it your TRS, your Teacher Resource System. Let's see if mine will open up. Here we go. So again, that will open up a new tab for you, and it will give you all of the resources that are in your physical copy in a digital format. It's really nice to present this up while you're teaching, so you can share videos and things with your students. But I encourage you at the beginning of the year, as you're planning your first month of school, to look at this Foundations and Routines tab. If you have your physical manual, that's going to be in the first few pages. But here's just a glimpse of what that looks like. Now, this is structured off of what might seem like daily 5 structures, if you're familiar with that. You'll see a lot of familiar language and routines from daily 5. So you can kind of build off of both of those resources if that's something that you're familiar with. But you'll notice that to make small groups happen, you have to start whole group with all students doing the same activity at the same time, practicing what it is like to be in small groups. So you'll see some of the things in here are not necessarily necessarily literacy components like building smooth transitions, taking care of books. Those are just some of your behavior management strategies that you'll include as you are teaching some review of literacy instruction from the previous year. So this is your overview, but you can always filter down and see their recommended lesson day by day. And of course, you have the option to tweak or modify any of these routines to make it work for your classroom. Okay. Let me jump back over to our presentation here. So that is just one small section of benchmark. And like I said, that's focusing just on setting up the routines to be successful in your literacy instruction for the year. There are benchmark trainings coming up, but we also have a Google Classroom that we've created where you can do some self-paced learning around the curriculum. So if you are brand new to APS, you might start here and go through the entire course. If you've taught for a while and just need a refresher or want to dive into a new component of benchmark, there's a place for everybody here. You can pick and choose to use this classroom as you see fit. So if you're following along in the slide deck, there is a link here. You can just click right on that and it will add you as a student to this classroom. Maggie is the creator of our classroom, and so you can always ask questions in the discussion board there or send her an email if you need any support with that. And of course, all of us can help you, but just know that that is there as a support. We also have Benchmark Advanced new user training coming up next week on July 27th and the 29th. So these sessions are repeat sessions, so you could choose which one works for you. It's a 3-hour session, and this is hosted by Benchmark Advance. So they will really walk you through the curriculum, the theory behind it, and dive really into that TRS and all of the resources that you have available within Benchmark. That registration is available in PowerSchool. You can just search for Benchmark Advance. And Courtney Grant would be your contact in the district if you need support getting registered for that training. All right, our next resource is Foundations. And last year during the pandemic, Foundations came out with a new resource called the FunHub. So if you were teaching last year, this might sound familiar to you, but they have decided to make this a free resource again this year. So you will have access to this again. And again, I'm going to switch my tab over back to my.aps.edu to show you how to get there and a few of the things that you can do on that website. So our FunHub is, I believe it's under, did they move it on me? It is not there. Oh, you know what? For this one, I'm sorry. We need to go to, let me pull it up here. I've got the link here. It is hub.wilsonacademy.com. My apologies. It is not in our APS library yet. So again, that if it's your first time going to that website, it will prompt you to create an account. And then after that, it will bring you to this page. I love this because it makes a lot of those Foundations materials digital. So if you have a Promethean board, you can project them for your class to see. And then it brings you to their PLC site for resources from Foundations, as well as making your teacher's manual digital. And I have the teacher's manual here. So again, you would get a physical copy of this after you have been trained in Foundations. Wilson is very peculiar about that you must be trained in their program before you can use it. And to access your digital manual, there is a code in the front of your book that you will enter in on this website, and then you can access your book digitally. But you have to have a physical copy in order to get the digital copy. So know that that is available here as well. Again, I'm going to highlight just one specific area that I would like to bring your attention to, and that is the learning activity overview section. So this is in your book, but also with Foundations, in your Foundations kit, you'll get a little cue card like this. I have a picture of it in the slide deck I'll show you as well. This is similar to the review and routine section of Benchmark. What's going to be different about it is that it's not going to give you day-by-day instructions of how to teach these routines, but it is going to give you instructions for each activity. So as you dive into Foundations and learn about, for example, Echo Find, you can flip to that activity and learn the steps to teach your students that routine so that as you teach it, it becomes very fluid. And then, like I said, they have it also in your manual that you can follow along in. Okay, let me come back to our presentation. So like I said, just a disclaimer about the manual, you must be trained in Foundations in order to receive a manual and to receive that digital version of it. Here are the activity cards, like I mentioned, just so you have a reminder of that. And just as with Benchmark, we have a Foundations support classroom that Maggie has built for you. So again, you can click that link there to join the classroom. Same thing, it is self-paced, so you can choose the order that you need to learn in, pick refreshers, or engage in discussion with us as you have questions about Foundations throughout the year. Another resource I have for you. This is the form of an email newsletter that is sent to all APS teachers once a month. This is brand new at the end of last year, so you may have seen it, but I really, really encourage you to keep an eye out for this. It's called the TLN Connect. Like I said, it's brand new and it's really exciting because rather than waiting for your principal to send you information from the Tuesday Times, you have access to resources and information that is pertinent to all teachers. So you will find information about PD, upcoming curriculum changes, opportunities for you to be leaders or to connect with other teachers, as well as information from other departments in the district. So if you don't happen to see this email within the first month of school, please let us know or email Courtney Grant to make sure that we get you on that list. Okay, and the final resource I have to show you today is the TLN Hub. So this is when I meant to come back to our my.aps.edu. Under Employee Resources, this folder here, you are going to find the Teacher Learning Network. You'll see our little C&I logo there, and that will bring you to our TLN Hub. So we have a ton of resources here. This is behind our APS firewall. So if you don't have an APS account yet, you won't be able to see this. But know that we have different content resources on here for you. So you can drop down to our ELA tab and find some district resources there, as well as PD information. So the PD calendar will have district planned and created PD for you from all departments that you can click on and see what's coming up, as well as register for it right from this. So you'll see EdTech already has some trainings in there, fine arts, etc. It's a great place to browse and see what's coming up. We also have our YouTube channel on here, a bunch of other resources. I encourage you to bookmark this tab and return to it often. And then finally, we are not going to have much time for this because I know you have your next session to go to, but this is a resource I encourage you to return to and start using at the beginning of your school year. It's called Plan, Do, Study, Act. So as Kathy mentioned, teaching is iterative, and setting up your routines at the beginning of the school year is a hefty process. So we encourage you to use this template to help you plan what those routines are going to look like and to monitor how it's going so that you can make changes to make your literacy block successful. Again, return to this as you see fit. You should get this from your principal as well as your TLF for your back to school PD sessions and resources. These will be recorded. Some of them already are, so know that you can return to this and see it on our PD calendar. And then finally, we just have some resources and references for you to look back on at your convenience. And we just want to say thank you for taking the time to be here. We do have office hours for this session later this afternoon at 1 o'clock, I believe.
12 o'clock.
12 o'clock, from 12 to 1. So if you have questions that you did not get answered